the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to see a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the agenda as presented with the following amendment: additional certified and classified personnel actions for consideration, item E3.
Motion made by Laura. Any second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Motion by Laura, second by Mark. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on, delegations, public comments. I'd like to welcome Mr. Nathan Heck. Sorry about that. Thank you for joining us.
Not a problem. It's a joy to be here. Thank you for allowing me to speak and be here, and just a privilege. Dear school board and staff, I come to you today as a parent and a community leader. I want to thank you for your time and dedication that you've given in these last months as we've gone through this pandemic. This is not something that's said much these days, thank yous and things that have happened. As a former teacher of 15 years and as a new parent to the school system in the area in the last year and a half, I appreciate the dedication of all the leadership here in town and all that have done and made decisions. They're hard to make, and I thank you for weathering the storm and leading well. As a leader in the community myself, I know you've had to make some hard decisions and they're not fun, and I applaud you for that. Each of you are valued and appreciated. I feel as if I'm privileged to be a part of this diverse community in a time where we can focus on what unites us each as humans and keeps us as one going together in the same direction. I realize that education is one of those areas that can and does bring the community together, as you all well know. I hope we don't focus on things that divide us, but grow in the things that unite us as a people and as a community, for all of us together, going for the same goal. I encourage each of you to keep carrying on. Public service is a place that is hard to know what it is like until you are in a situation like yourselves, and you know that, and I've been in those situations, and I appreciate that. Most of the times you're faced with impossible decisions, and I thank you for your service and being here. And I want to say thank you and look forward to your leadership in the future. If you allow me a moment to pray, I'd like to pray for everyone right now. Father, we come before you, we thank you for this community you brought us through and these days that you've given to us. We thank you for your guidance and grace, and I ask for wisdom on each of these leaders and the ones that are to come. I'm thankful for your guidance and encouragement for each of us. We know that you have given each of us an opportunity in this community to do great things. Thank you for creating us for such a time as this to make an impact for years to come. Please be with each person as they make decisions and looking forward to shaping the minds of future generations. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have a building presentation by Jenny Wilson Elementary School. Don't be shy, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Right, first, we want to thank all of you for something that was very much needed right before Thanksgiving, and that was some time off for our staff. Even though we were looking very forward to our staff development, and that was much needed, I think the need for those extra days kind of outweighed that. So from my staff and myself to you all, thank you so much. That was so needed and so appreciated, so thank you. Also, thank you for all the service and the time that you all give for our kids and our staff and our school buildings, so thank all of you. All right, this is one time that I am gonna step out of the way and I am turning this over to two of my teachers that have done amazing things with our student council. So I am going to introduce to you Kayla Henningsen, she's one of our fourth grade teachers, and Becky Brandt, our librarian. But also I want to recognize, who else we have? In the back is Kelly Livermore, she's our science teacher, so she came to support the kids. I think that's all of my staff right now. Most of them are watching from TV land out. So I'll turn it over to you two ladies and you can take it away.
Okay, these kids have a great presentation to share with you tonight, and the kids who are passing out pictures have something for you. So we're going to let them go first, and then we're going to let the kids start with their presentation.
Student council is a special group of kids that do things like helping kindergarten and recycling. To be in student council, you must fill out an application about why you should be in student council. Then the teacher chooses kids to be in student council based on their applications. The kindergarten loves when Stuco helps them. We help them with reading celebration, STEM centers, and library classes. Reading celebration is something they earn by reading books at home with their families. STEM centers are where kindergarten comes in and create with things like Legos. They also use Osmos. One of their favorites is Marble Run. We love to answer questions for them during library class. We help them find books and check out books. Book fair. The Scholastic Book Fair is where everyone comes to the library and buys books and other stuff. Stuco members have shifts of working in the book fair. The Stuco members help find books and help with the register. All of Stuco helps Ms. Jennings, our PE teacher, with school store every week. We help all of the students who come find what they want to buy. Also, we show them what they can buy with their money. The school store money is donated to the school for our fun events. Stuco takes care of the recycling each week. We collect the recycling buckets from each class. Then we sort the materials into different recycling bins, like paper, cardboard, and plastic. Stuco was in charge of canned food drug-free and made its house. All the classes at Jenny Wilson collected canned food and competed to see who can bring the largest amount. 2 classes earned a reward by bringing over 100 items each. Conferences. We don't have pictures of this project, but we held nerd conferences. We took shifts from Wednesday to Friday to check and parents into meetings with their kids' teachers. We also made sure that they got to the right classroom. Future projects. We are looking forward to future projects. One project is helping our friends across the street pick up pine cones.
Now I'd like you to go back through and tell all of them your names. Let them know who you are.
And grade, please. My name is Cooper Delahan, and I am in 4th grade. My name is Cameron Garcia, and I'm in 4th grade. My name is Logan Stuckey, and I'm in 4th grade. My name is Maya, I'm in 4th grade. My name is Ela Garcia, and I'm in 4th grade. My name is Tegan Tabor, and I'm in 4th grade. My name is Ela Garcia, and I'm in 4th grade.
And I would just like to add, they are an awesome bunch of kids, and they give up recesses to help me in the library. So I think that's great.
So before you
Get back
leave,
up here, get back up here. If there's
Yeah.
questions, you guys are
before you
answering.
leave, we might have a couple questions. Okay.
Well, I'm really excited that you guys maintain a recycling program. That's awesome. So who then takes it to the recycling center? You guys collect it and sort it. Who takes it to the recycling center? Do you know?
Tell them where we put it. Where do we put it? We put it in Do you have the easy job? You don't take it outside? Put Mr. Stuckey down for a little bit more of the hard work.
Whoa, I'm part of this.
Who does the part that takes it outside? Where do we put it? Ryan picks it up.
Nice, yeah, very cool.
What? What? What?
Oh, come on, give them another one.
Oh, I just want to compliment them on their speaking skills. I'm really proud of you for doing that, because even the adults are nervous when they get up here, so good job.
I'll ask one more hard question.
Oh,
No, please go ahead.
Who picks out what's sold at the school store?
Miss Jenny, Mrs. Jenny.
Mrs. Jennings.
Oh,
Okay, do you guys like managing the school store?
yes.
And what's your favorite thing to do as a Stuco member? It's coming here, right?
the book fair, you like which one? Helping in the library? What about you, which one do you like? School store? Recycling? Helping the kindergartners? School store? Did everybody tell what they like? Okay. And I love that we have an active student body that's doing this now, because this is probably the most active our Stuco has been. We've always done a few projects, but they've like doubled the projects, and they're looking for more things to do, so this is pretty exciting.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for being awesome fourth graders, and it's important other projects that are outside your school, like the Emmaus House. That's a very important project. So good job. You might also look into a competition between the other elementary schools as far as how much recycling.
Yeah, we'll take them on.
Maybe somebody like a pizza party or something. If you don't mind, if you come around and grab a pen and shake a hand,
That
that'd
would
be
be
great.
wonderful. You know, we-
You don't have to speak anymore.
Thanks for coming, parents.
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on, any correspondence for tonight? Yeah, so that's, thank you, Laura. Is there anything that needs to be moved off the consent agenda and brought up to the agenda to be discussed? Everybody good? Okay. Moving on, let's take a motion, for the consent agenda.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as previously amended.
Motion by Laura, and a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
I'd just like to point out that Jackie, Cammie, and John are going to be going to the KASB new board member training. I think that's great.
Yeah, that is. That's awesome. That's one step. So good job. Appreciate it. Any other discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Discussion items. Board goals, update. Teeing it up. TTP. Inside joke.
All right, I'm going to introduce our group that we've got here to present tonight, a little bit about what we've been doing, and then I'll jump up and run the PowerPoint for them. But we've got 3 coaches here tonight that attended the Good to Great Institute in October. Part of what we are doing is we are working with the New Teacher Project, which is a consulting firm, a nonprofit that is made, or it's an organization that's run by teachers for teachers. And so the process of using them to help us with what's called acceleration learning, which is working through the 4 key resources on grade appropriate lessons, high quality or high engagement, high expectations, and strong instruction. And so during this time, the coaches went through an opportunity, our instructional coaches went through an opportunity to attend what's called a Good to Great Institute, which gives them the opportunity to focus on those 4 key resources and how they can be implemented in the classroom. And then we've got some follow-up professional development going on afterwards to how they can increase the capacity of their coaching ability through that acceleration learning. So we've got a really good, strong start on it, and they're here to share about how it's impacted them and also their buildings. So I'm going to jump up and run the PowerPoint. But tonight we've got with us Tessa Wadle from Bernadine Sitz, Julia Morales from Florence Wilson, and then Jillian Algram from Plymouth Elementary with us.
I'm a little on the shorter side. So, like Jason was talking about, we are going to kind of start off with like the structure of the Good to Great Institute. It was very specific as it focused on acceleration learning, as Jason mentioned, based on those 4 key resources: our grade appropriate assignments, our grade appropriate assignments, strong instruction, high engagement or deep engagement and high expectations. So thinking back to 2018 when the New Teacher Project put out their research titled The Opportunity Myth, they went through and revealed how students who were not at grade level were in that position because they lacked access to those 4 key resources. So this institute really allowed us as coaches to be involved with those 4 key resources, what that means and what that looks like in an instructional environment. So we had the opportunity to receive that professional development on high-yield instructional strategies and implement that in classrooms within the district. Consultants from TNTP were there to help us in that planning process, as well as to provide us feedback on our instruction that was delivered. And Jillian's going to tell us a little bit more about that professional development.
Okay, so we went through a process of the Good to Great, and this started for coaches in mid to end of October. So coaches had the opportunity to pick between math or ELA, and then we had Zoom professional development days. So we had 4 days on Zoom, and we focused on those four key resources: grade level assignments, strong instruction, deep engagement, and high expectations. The professional development challenged us coaches in a lot of ways. We had to be students in the trainings. We were challenged to be to go from good teachers to be great through lesson planning, preparation, and the delivery of the lesson in the classroom. Then we had to put on our coaches' hats and think about how are we going to partner with teachers during this process, and to use what we learned to deliver those instructional strategies in the classroom. Within the Good to Great, we strategically planned to anticipate the outcomes of student learning. Based on what students produce, we adjusted our delivery method of the content. Tessa's going to talk about the 4 days of classroom teaching.
So after we had the opportunity to strategically plan as coaches, we had the opportunity to partner with our teachers, either at a 3rd or a 5th grade level within our building. This was an opportunity for the classroom teacher to observe those instructional strategies, as well as an opportunity for us as coaches to put these instructional practices into play. Each day, as coaches, as we were teaching, we were observed on Zoom by the TNTP consultants. And the feedback from those TNTP consultants was specific to our delivery of instructional practices that day as coaches. We also received timely feedback. So as we finished teaching, I'm thinking in the morning session, within an hour, we had feedback from those TNTP consultants. So it was really a quick turnaround with our feedback that exact day.
And we also received individualized feedback as well, as we received glows, things that went well that day through our teaching experiences, as well as opportunities for growth and action steps to increase our capacity as coaches and as teachers. Each afternoon after we taught within the classroom, we collaborated on Zoom with all of the other coaches, with the TNTP consultants on Zoom, to discuss the trends that they saw throughout our teaching that day, as well as it gave us an opportunity to plan and prepare for the next day's lesson that we taught within those 4 days of teaching. And we had the TNTP consultants along there with us to help us guide through putting those next action steps into play as we taught within those 4 days.
So there were many positive outcomes that came from this institute opportunity. And you're going to hear our experiences, our individual experiences, but even within those individual experiences with the coaches that are also represented here tonight, but the ones that are not, there was a common thread amongst us all. Not only were we able to put ourselves in a very vulnerable position, this was something brand new for us. And that helped us when it comes to building credibility with the teachers that we partner with. If we're willing to put ourselves in this situation and be vulnerable and learn something new, then it helps too to show us as partners with our teachers and not as anybody evaluative. And with that vulnerability, we were able to model lessons, reflect, discuss, not only amongst ourselves, but also with the teachers in the rooms that we were visiting. That manufactured success has to be my favorite part of this whole entire institute. Being able to take the 4 days, there were 4 short days, but to see the growth from day 1 to day 4 and the implementation of those high yield instructional strategies and having those high expectations for students was amazing. Students of different ability levels that in other circumstances were reluctant to participate or to engage were very much engaged in participating, because this helped us create that low entry point for all learners to come in, but still have that high expectation and that high level of rigor for them to not only participate, but do so accurately and correctly. So this really did have a ripple effect and impact. The classroom that I had the opportunity to be in, I consider that classroom teacher to be a very, very strong instructor. So it was very humbling to see somebody who I see as very instructionally strong take strategies that I was using and turn around almost instantly within the same afternoon or the same day and put them into practice. And all of those things were just so important to see and to get to witness. So I'm going to let the other ladies share their experiences as well.
My experience through the Good to Great Institute as a new coach, this training was a great opportunity for me to work on building my teacher and coach credibility with my staff. I was able to partner with a 5th grade ELA teacher, and she mentioned that after going through the Good to Great Institute in the summer, this was a great way for her to experience what those great instructional practices look like in combination with our content. Each day, the teacher in the classroom kind of took a step back, like Julia was saying, and had the opportunity to observe as us coaches came in and taught the first reading block of the 3 reading blocks within the day. The classroom teacher took the lesson plans that we created through TNTP and in combination with those observations, took the last 2 reading blocks of the day and implemented what we had implemented that first reading block into the other reading blocks throughout her day. And by at the end of day 4 and starting day 5 on her own, she felt empowered to implement those strategies and teach all 3 of her reading blocks, and just the excitement and willingness for her to learn through that process, as well as us coaches, was really exciting to see. We debriefed each day and made a plan to make adjustments for the next day. It was exciting to see the impact that these strategies had on student learning at all ability levels during the core instruction. For example, on day 1, students, some of them were producing 2 to 3 sentences regarding the learning target or the exit ticket for the day. And by day 4, after putting all these great instructional practices into play, students were producing like paragraphs in regards to their work. So it was really neat to see the growth and the knowledge that they had built within those 4 days of us coming in and teaching. Students were excited about their learning and they wanted to share. Those 4 days that I had the opportunity to go in and put on my teacher hat and teach in the classroom, it was really neat to see, again, students of all abilities wanting to share their thoughts and build upon each other's knowledge. So it was a really neat opportunity. And then our 5th grade ELA teacher, she took her experience back to her content, so other 5th grade ELA teachers, and shared the experience and the modeling that happened in her classroom. And from there, it has just kind of been a ripple effect within our building, so it's been a great topic of conversation. And since then, I've been able to share some more of these instructional practices during PLCs and supporting my teachers and planning and delivering on those strategies in their classroom.
Okay, my experience was in a 3rd grade classroom, and the teacher that I was with had done the Good to Great Summer Institute, so she was already using some of the strategies in her classroom, and her kids were like, yeah, let's learn something new with Mrs. Alder. So I was really excited to jump into her classroom since she had already been using some of the strategies. From day 1, students were excited and wanted to, I could tell that they had been using the process because she had been using it in her classroom. All ability levels showed success in the 4 days that I was teaching. In recent weeks, I've had PLCs and shared some strategies with the rest of the teachers, more about getting classroom discussions going, and several teachers chose to implement those strategies right away. And I had asked, if you want me to come and watch and come observe, and a bunch of them emailed me and said, I'm doing it during this time, come and watch. And watching some of those conversations happening with kids during that time, it was so much fun to see. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity and being able to have that ripple effect in the building as well. Oh, this is me too. So, future endeavors with the Good to Great program. We are going to continue professional development for coaches with TMTP. So coaches will increase their coaching capacity to give feedback to teachers through working with the consultants. There will be another Teacher Good to Great Institute for 32 teachers in the spring of 2022. So there will be an application process that K through 6 teachers could apply for one of those 32 positions available. They will go through 4 Zoom professional development days, just like we did. 3 of those days will be in January and 1 in February. In between those PD days, they will be asked to implement some of those teaching strategies that they learned on those PD days.
And looking into our spring semester, our goal is for our teachers to implement a turn-in talk at least 1 time per week within their lessons. We also will be measuring and looking for the amount of student talk versus teacher talk and walkthroughs and observations, and our goal regarding that is to shift that cognitive load to our students during the core instruction, as these are the components of the acceleration learning and the 4 key resources. So again, I just wanted to thank you guys for your time this evening, and just a great opportunity for me as a coach, and I know a lot of our teachers, to have this experience to continue to either grow our teacher capacity or our coaching capacity. So thank you.
Do you guys have any questions for us before then?
Yes.
start. First of all, I'm always excited to hear teachers be excited about getting in the classroom and trying new things and motivating students who, and it sounds like they're excited about it too, so I love that. And I'm still trying to completely understand the new teacher project, so we've heard all positives tonight, and I'm not trying to be a downer, but we know every curriculum, or it's not a curriculum, strategy, I don't know which one would be the right, has its speed bumps or challenges. Did you guys see any concerns or ways that you felt like things needed to be tweaked here and there to make it better, or maybe that it's could be more, there were some challenges for specific grade level or subject, or was it all positives? Which is wonderful.
I can speak a little bit. So I actually had the opportunity to participate in the Summer Institute, and then was able to participate in this Coach Institute. The clarity and the direction from summer to now, I feel was more there. One of the things that we discussed as coaches when we're talking about this planning process, when we're in the profession and you've been in it for some years now, a lot of times it is a mind shift in thinking about ways that, okay, yes, I know how to plan, yes, I know how to do this, but it, just like the Institute's called, you're going from being good to great. So there are challenges when it comes to thinking about what are ways that I can better my instruction. And so the coaches, we talked about like the time that it would take to really hone in and implement one of these core subject lessons. And it did take quite a bit of time because you were very reflective on every single one of the action steps that you were taking when it came to teaching a specific lesson based on a specific standard, and really thinking about, okay, I want my students to do the work, but how am I going to move them there without giving them too much of the answer? So guiding, but not giving. That was challenging, and could be a potential issue, that time aspect, but very worth it, very, very worth it.
Thank you. Yeah, that was one of my, and I think you answered one of my questions, if you felt like this was putting more on teachers' shoulders time-wise, or it was saving them time and efficiency.
I think anytime we do something new, it's always going to take longer to put it into practice. But I feel that if we do it and do it well, then it becomes more automatic. And when it becomes more automatic, then we save time in the long run. It's just slower to start.
And some of our messaging, and this comes from my office specifically, where the messaging in June, July, and August was not very clear to the staff on how this would be implemented. And so through this semester and going through a couple more good degrees, we've been able to define a stronger vision around it. So we're really narrowing the focus and creating a little bit of a slower process of implementing the strategies than trying to implement a lot at one time. Hence why we're moving back to just focusing in on student cognitive load and increasing the amount of time that students are using their voice in the classroom to do that. So about a month ago, we put out a video message to all staff that a lot of the coaches and principals have been sharing at faculty meetings and PLCs around where were we, where are we, and where are we going. And hopefully that message has now been a little bit clearer. Brittany Shields and myself, the curriculum coordinator, are meeting with every building last week, this week, and next week to kind of clear more of that up and answer some of those questions. So when we start on January 6th, we have a very clear vision and direction for the next steps of how we are going to work on putting these strategies into place. And we're going to use it from more of a foundation model. We're going to start with a base and get our base strong, and then we're going to work towards some more unique strategies that will have even more higher yields.
Well, I think all of us, our goal is to lessen the weight on our teachers' shoulders. So I always want it to be strategies that go in that direction versus giving you more work to do.
And what they also found out, and the coach told us, is a lot of the strategies that we've learned through these are ones that have been done in the past. So we are just recycling good teaching strategies and putting more of a spotlight focus on those versus trying to do 100 strategies, be a jack of all trades and a master of none. We're gonna take away, hopefully, that weight and be a master of 3 or 4 strategies that we can use to get those high yield results that you're talking about.
And are these strategies that you're, and maybe I just need to come to a training because it interests me, but is this classroom management or is it specific learning strategies? You talked about lessons. Are specific, is it like a curriculum or is it on how the teacher presents the information? Or is it all of that? I don't.
It's a combination of all of it. I think what we have worked on in the instruction office in conjunction with the coaches is that it has to start with intentional planning. So we have to be very intentional with the plan that we put together to prepare the day's lessons. And then during the core instruction, when the teacher is delivering the instruction to the students, what strategies are they going to use to deeply engage the students and to provide high expectations at the same time? And so when we intentionally plan those strategies, then we see the results in the data.
Thank you. I hope those didn't put you in a corner. I want to understand. And this is maybe, I don't know if this would be more for you or Dr. Carlin. I was curious how this is different from ADVID, or if it's similar to ADVID at a lower level, and if we're training administration in these skills too, like our principals or our, I know our coaches, but the other support staff in the building.
So Jennifer, I can tackle that a little bit. So of those 4 key resources, the high expectations, the deep engagement, and the strong instruction, those are almost, excuse me, those are almost word for word from the AVID model. The one that is probably slightly different for the AVID model, that's a little more specific, is the grade appropriate assignments. So there's a lot of parallels between them. There's I think maybe a little bit of confusion at our secondary levels that this is one more thing to do. And we've really been trying to help people see that really this is kind of the same thing with a different name. And we're pretty good at that in education. I mean, there's a lot of things that I remember from my days of teaching that we now have improved slightly and given them new names, and it's basically the same kind of thing we were doing 34 years ago. So we're not trying to put more on people, but we do think that that grade appropriate assignment component is really critical. And the example I would give you, our teachers are amazing. They work incredibly hard for our kids, and they want our kids to be successful. And so sometimes when we have a student come in who's fallen a little behind, and in an effort to help that kid be successful, we scaffold. We provide some extra support so that student still can successfully complete the task. Well, the art in all that is we got to be able to take that scaffolding away so that the student really learns the content or learns how to be able to do that skill or that task. And when we don't take it away, then all of a sudden, we really haven't given the student the opportunity to learn what they need to learn. So if we think about that, if we have some kids come in who are a little behind in, I'm just gonna make up a grade, let's say 4th grade, and we scaffold, and we do that by really giving them 3rd grade work, and they're doing okay, they're making it, but we never really pull that away and help them learn to do the actual 4th grade standards. Then when they go to take the 4th grade assessment, we shouldn't be surprised that they're not successful because they've never really gotten to do 4th grade work. So that is a component that AVID hasn't specifically addressed in those terms. And I think to a certain extent, maybe we haven't done a phenomenal job even at the elementary levels, but strong instruction, deep engagement, and high expectations, those are conversations that we've been having forever and ever and ever. The other thing that I think TNTP helps us with is it gives us some specific strategies that we can make concrete for teachers. So it's one thing to say high expectations, it's another thing when we have specific strategies we can go back to or a model that we can look at. So that's a great question. So sorry for the long answer.
No, I appreciate the explanation. I just want to make sure we're weighing the cost and benefits, because someone from the outside looking in, and I don't even remember specifically what this costs for these trainings, but, that we're not overlapping and, overspending on that kind of stuff. Definitely I want our money to go to benefit teachers, but I just wanna make sure that we're not doubling up on something that is so similar that we could be spending that money other places.
And there is some overlap, but I think it's constructive. I think it helps fill in gaps where our other models haven't provided that level. And there are great things, don't get me wrong, there are great strategies that we learned from Avid that we can put into practice as well. But these things really complement one another.
I'm sure we'll have more positive presentations as you get farther into it, so we'll see how it's working and benefiting our teachers and our kids. So thanks for letting me take up so much time on that.
Sure.
I don't have much, but it just, in hearing the excitement in the presentations and then the diversity that just you as presenters experienced that you relayed, because I think of the different schools and the different team settings. It was my presumption, and so I'd like you to confirm it or clarify that having a facilitator entity come in and help you in sort of a teacher and then coach collaborative with those classroom teachers, does that take some pressure off of you as a coach? Or maybe the better question is, I heard you use the word, all of you use the word excitement, even students excited. And so, does that help in the implementation of these things, sort of as a shot in the arm? I heard you say it was worth it.
I think it was, and like we've all talked about the ripple effect that it had in our buildings. One teacher's talking about it, they share it with somebody else, and it just keeps going, and they're asking questions, and they want to know more, and they want to try things, so that's why we've implemented some of those things in our PLCs, so that we can share it with everybody, not just the one that we worked with.
And even in a country school there, you worked with a teacher that had gone through the training previously, and I realized that summer training was out of the chute, and you, as you shared, learned some things in that process. But it seemed like there was quite the collaboration even in that kind of setting. So, I appreciate hearing from you tonight and hearing about this. It just seems like even though some of this stuff is well known to teachers, the process is it seems like it's full of opportunity and encouragement.
Yeah, I know there's always, going to be naysayers with regard to any program that we implement, but I'm really excited about this presentation and the presentations we've had in the past, where we've seen more in-depth work from the students coming in, and obviously coming up with higher level thinking. And I'm really excited about that. One thing I'm kind of concerned about, I guess, is this good to great, because Ms. Morales, what happened to you in November of 2017?
I was awarded a crystal apple.
Right, so I don't know about good to great, because, I think you're already great, so.
Thank you. But always working on getting better.
So maybe great to outstanding or something like that. So, thank you.
I guess my one question is, so when you talk about the long-term planning, how far out is that? Like, what does this look like? Because again, that's one of the messages that I hear, is that we get new programs on the regular, and then they kind of tend to fizzle out, and then we're introducing new programs. I'm kind of wondering what this one looks like.
So through the process this fall, in conjunction with talking with Dr. Carlin and Glenda, we have the consultant that is directly working with us now, Kristen Hart. She lives in Kansas City, and she's been working with us in our office through Zooms, but she's actually going to be here physically January 5th and working with us. We currently right now have an immediate plan, a 6-month plan, a 1-year plan, and a 3-year plan. She's going to help us flush that and work towards a 5-year plan, in helping with conjunction also with some of our data needs in terms of getting all students on grade level by 2024. So those things are going to start meshing together with that. So currently right now we've worked up to, in 3 years, this is what we're hoping to see and how we are going to start progressing in doing that. In terms of committing to any professional development beyond this year, that hasn't happened, but we have these ideas of what we'd like to see and how we can continue to evolve with working with whatever organization we may choose, but we'd have the vision of where we want to be with that immediate 6, 1, 3, and 5 plan in doing so. So we would have something probably in the spring to be able to report on what those 1, 3, and 5-year plans are. But we're gonna, right now they're rough draft form, and so we have some good ideas, but we need other eyes to look at them and to continue to evolve those to make sure that we are including stakeholders, coaches, teachers, administrators to help flush that to a deeper pool than what we have right now.
Jason, can I add?
Yeah.
We're using ESSER scholars to fund that this year, and if we want to continue it, we will take that to our stakeholder committee in the spring and propose to do more with the ESSER scholars for the next year. So 1 year at a time, but we will use, we will do that presentation to our district site council to use ESSER scholars.
Our coaches and our instruction office feels that this philosophy, because it is a philosophy, it's not a program, is something that we do want and need embedded to help our core instruction. So as a philosophy, we see this with a 1, 3, and 5-year plan. How we achieve the professional development around it comes back to the money talks. But the philosophy, we think that's what we want to set as a standard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, all of you, for going through the program and that willingness to continue learning and go above and beyond. I'm always just amazed by how much you all put into your everyday, then above that, then sideways, and I'm truly amazed by what you are able to accomplish, and just, I'm very thankful to you, so thanks.
So a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I attended a board faculty meeting, and I believe Avery, Dr. Carlin, and Ms. Boers, and I asked that question as far as how the TNTP program was working in that facility, if you will, that building, and I probably got about 80% response of positive, and 10 or 15% that raised their hands on still kind of struggling with it. I don't know if struggle is the right word, but just trying to get their head wrapped around it, and they were looking forward to another PLC that was going to be coming up, and I think we might have postponed that with the extra couple days. But so it was really good to hear some of the comments that most of those teachers had towards that, and some were from the summer program, and then moved on into the next phase, if you will. But as far as the ESSER's funding, I do believe from sitting in on that with Janine in that council site, I can't remember. I'm
District
sorry.
site council?
Thank you. Sitting back as a spectator and watching how that goes with the different buckets of money, and see how important, it wasn't just as important to 1 or 2 people, it was important to most everybody that was sitting on that site council to put that little bit of money in each bucket, and that happened to come to the surface. And I know we had to move quick on some of that at the beginning, when we had to start spending those ESSER funds, but the other part of it is, that makes me feel comfortable moving forward with it, is that you have to come back and provide that data, why it's working, how it's working, and have that self-check, that self-regulating tool. So I appreciate it. The other thing that, going through the candidate, we went to meet and confer with the teachers, and a lot of times that we got to speak with some of them teachers after we each got up and spoke, is that, how do we get some stuff off of our plate? So that was one of the questions I was going to have tonight, and I think some of the answers that you gave to Jennifer and Dana and Mark and Laura is that this seems like it's going to streamline, and maybe by streamlining our teaching process or how we go about engaging that student and putting more responsibility on them, maybe help take some of that other stuff off the plate, due to COVID and social emotional and all that stuff. So that's what I'm hearing tonight, right? That we're trying to make them master teachers, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the quick kind of analogy or metaphor to it is plates for teachers have been full since the start of time. I had a great discussion with my dad over Thanksgiving about that, and he started teaching in 1975 and retired after 40 years of teaching. And he said, when I started in 1975, we were talking about teachers' plates were too full then. I've been in education for 21 years, and that's been the same talk. What we're really thinking about doing is, instead of having your Thanksgiving plate full of just a little bite of everything, is let's just get the good stuff. Let's get the turkey, big old chunk of pumpkin pie and a big old deal of mashed potatoes. Fill up our plate with the stuff that's the most important, and let some of the stuff that's maybe not as important not be on our plate. We're still gonna have full plates, but let's just be a little bit more focused on what it is that has the most impact, and maybe some of those things that don't, we can let those kind of take off our plate a little bit instructionally. So that's my analogy for it.
Yeah, and I'd like to also concur some of Dana's comments that you guys do a tremendous job. We appreciate you coming in here and speaking for the better part of that program, so we appreciate it. Dr. Parley, any comments? Thank you, guys.
And just thank you.
And one last parting shot for the coaches is Kristen Hart, who's worked with about 13 or 14 districts across the state, said by far our coaching group is the most energetic, most knowledgeable, and most willing to sacrifice some of their personal time of any of the
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think we're gonna go ahead and tee it up for ACT. Sorry, that's a,
Jason's going around too, I've already teed him up as well, so.
So Mr. Norby and I are going to be presenting this information. He's going to give most of the information on the ACT data, and then I'll jump up and finish with state assessment data. But we it's broken into two sections, so we'll talk about ACT, and then we'll take some questions on that, and then we'll talk about state assessments, and then we'll talk about that. So.
All right, I'm back. So this is month 3 in the high school board goal and district standards or district outcomes presentations. And this one, as Mr. Johnson said, is on ACT. Some of this is going to be a rehash from previous years, just getting everybody's mind right back into what we're talking about, and then some new data and some new information about how the ACT is being used. So, as you know, the ACT, you can go ahead and skip forward.
Sorry.
It's a cumulative test. There can be as many as 5 subsections, but we don't give the writing at Garden City High School. So there are 4 subsections: English, math, reading, and science. Cumulative, it becomes almost a 3-hour exam with all those different subsections. It's all multiple choice, and the longest of those sections is math followed by English, and that's a good hour of they do those back to back, and then reading and science are after a break. So the first part of it is definitely the most rigorous part if you talk to our students, because that first hour is bang bang. I've talked to you a little bit about what we've been trying to do in our school as far as interventions for students, trainings for staff on the ACT. We've had reps from ACT come out and talk to our staff about using the data for both the ACT and the pre-ACT to help us in the classroom and for students to improve their performance. We take a look at the data every time we get a new set of data, especially for the pre-ACT in our PLCs. Try to take a look and see how our kids are doing compared to previous years, what subsections, what areas do we need to take a look at. Have we grown in, or have we kind of slid in a little bit? The past few years, we have been using a formative type of assessment given multiple times each year, made by the ACT, called Aspire. It was one we were doing multiple testings, multiple assessments. Students could and teachers could see where they were at in regard to ACT benchmarks, see improvement through a year. We could get our kids used to the types of questions, get them used to the format of the assessment. And we would do that in 9th grade and 10th grade to hopefully better prepare our students for the actual assessments in the 11th grade. That product is no longer available. ACT stopped making that available to us this year. So that's why it's kind of highlighted. We're going to have to And Mr. Johnson's helping me do it, just research what else is out there, what other kinds of formative types of assessment for national norm tests would be out there for us to be able to utilize to help our kids. And also, we would be using a product called the ACT Academy, and that was free. It was free practice tests. If you entered in a pre-ACT score or entered in your ACT score, it would tell you what you needed to work on to improve and get a better score in your next testing. And it would give you some sample tests, it would give you some assignments, it would give you some study skills, some study prep work. But that's no longer available to us either. That has been taken out of our tool belt. So we're trying to find some replacements for those products that were free to us. Well, the ACT Academy was free to us. We had to pay for the Aspire testing, but those aren't currently available to us. One thing that's not on there that we have been using is we also contract a couple times a year with a lady from Northeast Kansas who kind of makes the rounds doing what she calls power prep sessions with students who are about to take the ACT. And she'll come to Garden City and have 50 or 60 students who are getting ready to take the ACT, and she'll meet with them for about a half a day up in our library or in another site, and work with them on test prep, work with them on some helpful hints on taking the tests, what to focus on, how to improve their scores. And she'll be back in January. She usually comes in the fall, and then if she can, once in the spring. So she'll be back to do another session with our kids in January.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. I'm just curious, unless you said it already, why would ACT pull Aspire and create that void?
Yeah.
And the only thing that's changed out there really is this new approach that maybe we get to being able to retake
Yeah.
sections.
I'm not sure why they pulled Aspire. We've been using it for a couple of years. We liked what we've been getting. Teachers had liked the information they were getting kids to practice. I liked it as an administrator. I could see where we were at and how we grew. But we just received notice last spring sometime, I think it was, that they were going to pull the product and replace it with something down the line. But we don't know what that is yet. So, yeah, I'm not sure why they've done that. And then we also, something we've been doing is use their ACT scores or their pre-ACT scores in their individual plans of study. So part of the pre-ACT work is that students are asked some questions about what they're interested in doing, what they want to do in the future, what their hobbies, their activities, their interests are. And it will take their academic performance and match it up to what they're interested in and give some suggestions as far as people who work in these occupations have the same interests that you do and similar academics. And so it gets the kids a start, especially when the freshmen take a pre-ACT, gives them a start on kind of investigating different types of colleges, careers, pathways. So we use it in our individual plan of study to help them investigate potential careers and potential educational pathways. Each year, we had been testing over 60% or near 60% of our seniors, and the 11th graders is what this is. This last year, I don't know if it was a COVID thing or what it was, but we had a lower participation rate this year as far as our juniors. We did have a number of students who were doing remote learning come back in to take this assessment, but we had a lower number just this last year. Some different changes, and this is kind of something Mark was alluding to. ACT has started using or making available what they'll call a super score. For students taking the assessment more than one time, they will calculate a super score for you using your best scores in each subset. So your best English score, your best reading score, your best math, your best science. And then they will calculate what they call a super score. And was interesting for me. It was actually available to anybody who had taken the test from 2016 on. So if you were in college, you had a son or a daughter in college, and for one reason or another they needed an ACT score, you could request ACT to calculate a super score for you. And they will make that available, which is, like I said, kind of interesting to me.
Is there a reason they couldn't have done that in 1994?
No, Ryan, I don't think so, but that would have been a lot more helpful to me back in 1986, trust me. Yeah. So, but the role, it's interesting they're making this change, but the role of the ACT is kind of changing too, as far as college admissions and things. It's still a really important test, but it's not the same kind of test or held it at the same way that when we took it to go to college. When many of us took the ACT, that was your gateway into college. That was one of the gatekeepers for college acceptance. It's not that way anymore. Just recently, the Kansas Board of Regents has removed ACT as an entry requirement for admission into all Regents universities. 2 years ago, they did it for Fort Hays, Wichita State, K-State, Pittsburgh, and Emporia, and just this last year, KU dropped it as an entry requirement. Now, you can still get in with an ACT score, but if you don't have it, they also accept your high school GPA. They've done some studies, and their research has found that high school GPA for the Kansas Regents Institutes was actually a better indicator of whether or not from first year to second year you're going to be successful in your college experience, which is kind of interesting to me. Most of our kids are going to go to Garden City Community College, for instance. You don't need the ACT score there, but what most of the institutions will do is if you don't have an ACT score that allows you to get into college algebra or English 1, they'll give you their assessment to determine the proper math class for you or the proper language arts class for you. At Garden City Community College, you'll take the AccuPlacer, and that will determine whether or not you get into that math class or the language arts class. So, but if you go to, for instance, one of our private schools in our state, KCAC school, Southwestern College, Kansas Wesleyan, those schools, an ACT score is very important because that will help determine your financial aid. They'll multiply your ACT score times your grade point average, and on a sliding scale, that helps determine what kind of academic scholarship you get. So it still can be a very important assessment for a lot of kids. This year, and I'm not really sure why, we kind of hypothesize it might have something to do with this calculating of a new super score for our seniors. Building level reports, building level scores and averages, and state averages for the last graduating class of 2021 are not available to us yet. We don't have those yet to be able to report to you, but we'll get them to you as soon as we do. So we went back to, Mr. Johnson and I went back to the most recent set of building-wide scores that we were able to get. And those were for our juniors, who were taking the ACT, many of them, for the very first time. And we decided to go back and to take a look and see how our juniors have progressed for the last few years since we've started giving this mass on-site during school ACT test. So we've done it 3 times, and here's the progression of our scores for our juniors over those 3 times, compared to the state average. Now these are going to be slightly different than the final scores in a year because of the ability to retake and to get a super score. Not a lot of our kids retake. A lot of our students will take this free one, call it good. Now some will chase a higher score, and that's great, and it means a lot of money sometimes for them to get that higher score. But many of our kids they don't. But here they are for the last 3 years for our juniors compared to the state's juniors moving through our ACT testing. We have made gains in the composite score and each of the 4 subgroups at Garden City High School. And the state has actually decreased both in composite score and each of the 4 subgroups over the last 3 years. And so that was, as I said, that was the most recent set of building-wide data that ACT has made available to us. We hope soon to get the building reports. Mr. Johnson's checking every day to see if those are being put out, but we don't have a state average yet. We don't have a district average yet. We don't have a building average as of yet for those. So. Questions?
Dr. Hanley?
You think it's possible that you're going to continue to see a kind of a catastrophic, not catastrophic, but a significant decline in the number of kids that want to take it? I mean, their motivation for taking it, for most of them, is not for an academic scholarship, it's for admission. If they lose that motivation because it's not required for admission.
Yeah, and that's my working hypothesis for why we had fewer kids take it last year. Partly COVID and partly that, but I don't know. I mean, it's a 1-year thing. I hope, because we've always kind of prided ourselves a little bit on having more than half of our kids taking that test and encouraging kids to challenge themselves against that standard. And so, I'm hoping we still have kids challenge themselves and work that way and work towards that goal. But and I'll be interested to see what happened to the states, because they always tell us what the average score was in the state, but also how many kids took it across the state. And I'm wondering if that same trend.
Well, it's a really sort of disorienting paradigm shift. I mean, the universities have taken a hard look and determined an ACT score is not a really great predictor of success. So we got to do something different, or we at least need to start off by saying, all right, we got to take some focus off the ACT score. The thought to me, though, is if the universities are saying it's not a predictor of success, then we need to make the same paradigm shift, which is we got to figure out what else it's going to be. And to hold on, for me, to hold on to this idea that it's the ACT and encourage kids to take it. I mean, we don't have anything else yet.
Yeah.
It seems we should be trying to figure out what is it going to be.
Yeah.
And we should be trying to figure it out pretty quick, because, well, A, universities have already told us they're not going to be. It's not useful for them. And B, you're not going to have kids taking it. With a high number of going to the community college, and there'll be a few that take it if they're still going to pin, some financial aid or for some academic awards to it.
Yeah.
There'll be a few that take it for that, but it's pretty disorienting to take this standard that we've all grown up with as something you can hang your hat on for whether or not you're ready for college, and then the colleges are saying, no, actually that doesn't tell you the kids are ready for college. And I confess to being pretty disoriented myself.
Yes,
I had kids who's chased those scores, right, and having some kind of confidence as a parent that because these scores were what they were, that these kids were actually ready. And now, I don't know what to think as a board member, but it seems like we better figure it out.
Yep. And that's conversation. I concur. I mean, I'm a parent of 2 daughters that each took the ACT multiple times, chasing that number. And that was a conversation that I've had Kansas Principals Conference with several other principals. Like, okay, well, on one hand, we are encouraged to have kids take the ACT, and it's being made free by our state, and that's great, and we're trying to do that. But on the other hand, KBOR is telling us, well, that's great, but you won't need it to get into K-State. You won't need it to get into
I guess I would hope that in very short order, instead of this ACT presentation might be, here are the things that we're looking at as a replacement for our assessments. Here's the pluses of them, here's the minuses of them, here's what other schools are doing. I mean,
ago, we were going one way with giving the free ACT to 3/4 of our kids, and now, here we are. Yeah.
Well, then you get the innovations that seem to be really good and helpful. I mean, I know my daughter took it multiple times and sort of, she'd get better in one area the second time, but then lost a little in the, you know, so there's trade-offs there, but the super score would be wonderful. But then all of a sudden, okay, well, that's not really the test. Clearly, there's value in where we've come with the ACT. It's just this question of where we're going and what's the measure here that apparently even ACT must be working on, because they've pulled product and said, wait and see.
Yeah.
Which I think school boards would be very impatient in waiting and seeing. But it's, yeah, I agree, it's disorienting.
Yes.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
You said that we don't have state numbers yet, but when you did the averages or the percent of our student body in 2018, 2019, 2020, do you have that data for the state? Did their numbers decline between those two testing years?
For the final number, yes. I think in my presentation, and it's been a while, in last year's presentation, yes. The state's numbers have gone down in ACT as far as their averages for the last few years, not just in the juniors, but in the seniors in their final assessment, they've gone.
And I think, touch on, I think what you're trying to also get at is how many, are students out there across the state not taking it as well?
Well,
Percentage
as far as
of
the percentage of numbers of testers,
Yes.
they give that to us. I believe it's going down to.
That link I have right underneath the table goes to the profile report where we got the data that comes from ACT through the State Department. I can jump on it real quick and see if I can get to it, but I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of, because I made this in a Google Drive folder.
You're fine, what I was actually
Oh, yeah.
looking at, it kind of was different than where Alex was going with that, is that our scores are going up, but the
Yep.
state scores are going down. So I thought, I wonder if it has to do with, obviously, if we're averaging fewer students, then that might play into that number,
Yep.
but that's why I was asking that question.
If I remember looking at it in 2018-19, the state gave about 25,000 to 11th grade, and then in 2020-21, it's about 22,000. So there
Yep.
was a decrease, but don't quote me on those numbers, I would have them.
You're fine, you're fine, thank you.
So is that, but, sorry, jumping in, but does that trend with the state as far as students, less students taking it to the state, does that show a trend, or does that show some problems to ACT, or some worry to them thinking, okay, we need to think of something different because we're not having all these kids want to come take it, or retake it again to get the scores? Even with the super score, that'd be great, but is there a trend that's happening at ACT sees that we're not seeing, that, or they're not alluding to, that, as Dr. Hannigan said, that maybe we need to just start thinking outside the box a little quicker,
About how we
maybe
measure
not
numbers.
waiting?
It very well could be. I thought it was a really neat opportunity 3 years ago when our state went one direction and we were encouraging all these kids to be able to do this. But like I said, it really does seem like there's one part of our state going one direction and then the Board of Regents kind of going the other direction, and we're in the middle saying, which way?
Except what's interesting is Dr. Watson had a conversation with the ACT CEO about 2 or 3 years ago, where the ACT CEO said, my test does not indicate the success of students in college. And I believe I said that in a meeting here a couple of years ago after a KASB meeting where he came and said that. So I think our soft skills is really where we need to probably be focusing, because, and Mr. Ollinger, please don't glare at me, knowing what my oldest son's grade is, and the lack of turning in homework. I mean, that's probably where we need to be focusing, and making sure that our students are prepared for college and being able to not have a parent standing over them saying, get your homework turned in, and things like that. So making sure that they're going to be able to stand on their own 2 feet outside of their parents' house.
Yeah, I think you're right, that work ethic, that determination, and you're right, some of those soft skills that contribute to a GPA may be more important than.
Any other discussion?
Now, as soon as we do get our building numbers and the state average, we'll make sure Dr. Carlin gets them and get them to you guys. So, but they're just, as of now, not available.
Gil's down, I'm down.
Okay, so now we'll move on to state assessments. So we've got our results from the state assessments. I'm going to take you on just a little journey of what we're going to do this year with state assessments, what our data was last year. We're going to look at how we compared to some of our peers. Then we're going to kind of get into a granular look at what have been some of our changes in our data over the last 3 years. And then at the end, we've got some action steps that we're putting together based on our data for how we can maybe put some improvement together. This year, we're going to continue testing in math and ELA as per the ESSA guidelines, formerly No Child Left Behind. So everybody in 3rd through 8th grade and 10th grade in math and ELA will have to take a test. In math this year, the 10th grade test is going to be field tested, so we are not going to get our results back. So this is a year where they rewrite the test, they send out a bunch of questions, everybody takes it. They see how many kids really miss. If every kid bombs one question, then they throw it out and they recalculate scores and they go through. So getting our 10th grade data next year is going to be different, and it's going to be scored different. It's just going to look different. So we just want that understood. We're going to continue as a state to test science in 5th, 8th, and 11th grade, and that is still a computerized test. And then this year, the state has added the history government test. And this is what's going to be very different, and this is a different type of test. So it's going to be done in 4th grade, 7th grade, and 11th grade. What they're going to do, it's a classroom-based assessment, so it's kind of a project. So the students will be asked an essential question that is at a high level. From there, the teachers will be grading the students on a rubric based on claim, evidence, and reasoning, and the rubric has been laid out by the state. Our teachers have been trained on that rubric and how to use it. They have to do at least one during the year, and then the students' scores will be uploaded to the state at the end of the year. And so we're still really in the norming phase, so there's not really going to be a kickback of what is a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. So we're still in the norming phase, but that is a new type of assessment that we will be giving. So there's not a date or a testing window. Our testing window is actually the first day that we were in school on August 9th until the last day that we're in school on May 19th to get that completed. I know we've been working well with our social studies teachers at all of those grade levels to get that going, and I believe some of our secondary schools in 7th and 11th, they've already given maybe a precursor to it. They've given one example of how to use that rubric, and then they're going to do it again. Students can take that assessment as many times as they want, and the teacher only has to report the student's highest score at the end of the year. So kind of a super score, so to speak, for the history and government piece to it. So on the next slide, we're going to look at our ELA scores from just last year. Again, that's broken down into level 1 through 4 going from left to right. So this is the district compared to the state average. As a district, we were 39.91% in level 1, and the state was at level 1 was 30.3%. So as we start talking about these levels, I just want to put a little definition out there real quick to make sure that we're keenly aware of how the state defines levels 1 through 4. In 2015, the state started the process of redoing their state assessments and doing their state standards for math and ELA. There was adoption of new standards in 2017. During that time period, between 2015 and 2017, they started to see a lot of students that were scoring in level 2 on the state assessment at that point in time were being successful in college and were persisting in college. This was given at a special committee at the Senate Education Special Committee meeting last week. That at that point in time in 2017, as they revised the standards, they revised the definition for the levels 1 through 4. So currently, level 2 is considered students that have basic skills to be successful in college and career. 3 is proficient, 4 is exceeds, and then of course 1 would be ineffective skills for being college and career ready. So technically, a level 2 is students are able to have the basic skills to be college and career ready. They would be able to score an equivalent score of the benchmark scores that we saw for the ACT at 18 in English, at 22 in math, if they're at that level 2 area. So just put that framework in your mind of understanding how that definition has changed over time since 2015 to 2017, and then currently now. Also, some very interesting facts that Dr. Watson has shared with superintendents associations and other groups across the state is that as recently as the 2017 standard revisions were done, there was a comparison analysis of all 50 states done into which states' standards ranked the highest. And those states that assess their students each year on those standards, which state achieved the highest compared to the NAEP. Because the NAEP is the only nationally normed test that's given to all 50 states across the United States. And Kansas ranked the highest in both math and ELA for our standards and the assessment that we're giving. So when we're looking at some of these numbers, our students that are achieving levels 3 and 4 are far exceeding those proficiency skills needed to be successful later in life. And knowing that level 2, we do have our students having basic skills. So there's our comparison to the state for ELA of last year. If we go to the next slide, we look at the 5-year data trend. Of course, you'll notice if you're thinking sequentially, 2020 is missing. That is our COVID year where we did not take the state assessments. So as you can see, really in ELA, we have been somewhat stagnant in our data. We are staying pretty stagnant, and some of those, there are contributing factors to population, to our EL language learners that we continue to work with. And then also looking at how some of our ELA textbook adoption, when that came into place and how that happened. But the one thing I do want to note, just in a visual perspective that you can see, is that while our level 1 stayed pretty stagnant and they're still well above the state average, the state's average for level 1 is increasing during that time. So that's just something to be able to point out and see. If we'll go to the next, we'll be able to look at our peers. I'm not going to put other school districts on blast by putting their name on these slides, but I've given the information of who the peer schools are to Dr. Carlin, and he can share that with you. But these are 3 other school districts that are in Kansas that have a similar demographics. They are not a town that is considered a suburban or next to a metro area, and they're also a community that has meatpacking plants. So that would give us the best scenario. And there are 3 other districts in the state of Kansas that have that. So when we're looking at our ELA scores from last year, 2021, as you can see, within our peer data, we would be second out of 4 within that peer data. There's one school, peer number 3, that level 1 is outperforming us. But then we're outperforming peer 1 and peer 2 at the same time in our ELA data. And those are having similar demographics, similar economic makeups, and similar isolation from metro areas. If we go to the next slide, now we're looking at math. This is a situation where we do have some areas of concern as our math scores. Our math scores are trailing behind the state more than what our ELA scores were. And so we have some real confusion about where these scores, why they are what they are. And so this helps us with some of our action steps going forward. Our 5-year trend, we were taking a downward trend in level 1. We were seeing some very significant movement. Where in 2017, you can see we were at 42.6% in level 1. We had reduced that down to 38% by 2019. We have our COVID year, we come back, and in 2021, we took a pretty sizable jump up to 46.4. In comparison to the state, we were closing the gap pretty quickly, pretty aggressively, and then we have lost ground on that comparison to the state. And so seeing that impact of not being in school and some of our pandemic learning had an impact, but we do think there are maybe some other areas that we can continue to work on, because that data is not a good data set for last year. Yes?
Can you remind me what grade levels test on the math?
3rd through 8th
Okay.
and 10th grade.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In the next slide, again, we compare ourselves to our peers. Again, there's really, us, peer 2 and peer 3 are very, very similar. I mean, almost identical within the numbers. They're marginally within 1% to 1.5% of each other in almost all 4 areas. Whereas all 3 of us are very much outperforming peer 1 with our math data in doing that.
I'm gonna try not to out peer 3 here, but peer 3 has a 4-year institution in that school district, which could have a very significant impact on the type of students that you would have in that school district. Would you agree?
Correct. Through the KSD report card, you can ask for similar schools based on demographics and socioeconomic, like our free reduced numbers. These were the ones that were kicked out, and when looking at the geographic location, that one that doesn't fit geographically with the other ones, but it does meet some of those qualifications of having a meat packing plant, having a similar free reduced, and having the similar, maybe not as high of an EL population, but still having a pretty significant EL population.
That jumped out at me as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that, well, and there's another school district right near it, so, and maybe they were, so maybe it's
Mhm.
Emporia, sorry.
It's all right.
I didn't mean to. Pier 3 is enough of a difference, but I don't.
I felt comfortable putting up there to show, and as you guys are aware that what they are, to say, normally we always just think about Southwest Kansas, but maybe to compare to a district that's not in Southwest Kansas and how close are we, that maybe has some similar demographics as we do. Okay, next slide. This is where we really get into some of the granular pieces. This has a lot of work from a lot of people that were put into it. And so the first column on the left, in this, we're looking at the change to level 1. Okay, so just our level 1 scores we're looking at. And what you really want to think about is a negative number here is good, okay, because we're reducing the amount of people in level 1. So a negative number here is good. So if you look at the changes from 2016 to 2021, in 3rd grade through 6th grade, we were really we're outperforming the state, and especially in our 4th grade, we were even moving in the right direction. Our secondary schools weren't moving in the right direction, and we weren't outperforming the state. So there's a little bit of a concern there, as we can see when we're actually now breaking it down by grade level. The next column is just from 2016 to 2019. So this is the new standards, the new test, but without the COVID data in it. So we can isolate out what we were doing before COVID. As you can see, it's very similar to what it was 2016 through 2021. Our primary grades, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, were outperforming the state, and our 4th grade was closing the gap at a very high level. And then our secondary schools, we started to lose some of that gains. And then as you can tell, when we jump into 2019 through 2021, which is our COVID learning experiences, we took a hit. And so we understand that we have some unfinished learning there that we're going to have to identify, assess how we are going to fill those gaps, and provide some of that scaffolding and just-in-time learning to support that. While at the same time, our middle school scores did lower their number of level 1s during that time. That's in ELA. In math, we go through the same way. In math, from 2016 to 2021, we were looking really good. We were outperforming the state in every grade except for 5th and 7th grade. And then really from 2016 to 2019, pre-COVID, we were vastly closing the gap in each grade level outside of 7th grade. And then post-COVID, we were still outperforming the state in 3 different areas, 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 7th grade. But then our other grades lost some ground during that time. Now our next slide is we're really looking at when we combine levels 3 and 4. So what we would consider the proficient and the advanced within the college skills. Where were we going in those directions too? And again, the columns fit the same way, 2016 through 2021, 16 through 19, and then a post-pandemic. So in the ELA, in levels 3 and 4, we were far outperforming the state and closing gaps by adding more and more students into our levels 3 and 4 in grades 3, 5, 6, and 8. And then we were actually holding steady or outperforming the state while we were still losing ground in 4th grade and 10th grade. But our 7th grade was an area that we were struggling in. Same within 2016 to 2019, there's some trends there. What is nice and what is surprising about this data set here is from 2019 to 2021, that we were still outperforming the state and or gaining ground in 4 of our 7 grades that were tested. Now we do have 3 grades that we lost some ground in, specifically 4th grade is a large number, the largest number out of that piece that we lost out of 3 and 4. So those are students that were in 3 and 4, we lost 11% that were in levels 3 and 4 in doing that. When we jump over to math, again, we are looking very, very good from 2016 to 2021. 2016 to 2021, we are outperforming the state and gaining numbers in every grade but 7th grade. In 2016 from 2019, every grade level is outperforming the state within our growth in levels 3 and 4. And we have 4 of our 7 classes that are growing in a positive direction, with 6th grade growing by almost 12% within that time frame. And then as we see during our COVID learning experiences, we still were very positive in that 5 of the 7 were outperforming the state and making positive gains, and we had 2 grade levels that lost, or we were going in the wrong direction, plus we weren't outperforming the state. And so that's a little granular data, a little bit smaller chunks to look at the grade levels and how we are looking at both ends of the state assessment. Mathematically, we were like I talked about earlier, mathematically we were moving very well and very fast, and then we hit a little bit of a road bump. So we are analyzing how we were doing that by articulating our common assessments that students are taking right now and really digging into how are they doing on the standards and providing a strategic plan to help teachers implement that. In ELA, we are fleshing out our curriculum map and our pacing guide and our ELA adoption that was done. This is really just the first full year that this ELA has been used without an interruption, whereas the last 2 years it had been. So if we go to the next slide, this is kind of our next steps that the instruction office, which is really myself and Brittany, and then we talked with Dr. Carlin and Glenda about what our next steps were going to be. We want to improve core instruction. So our tier 1 core instruction, what the teacher is delivering to the entire class or the entire grade, we want to improve, and we're going to do that through acceleration learning. And as you heard from the coaches earlier, as we saw with some of that summer school data that we reviewed a couple months ago, using acceleration learning in the core learning with fidelity to the grade appropriate assessments, high expectations, deep engagement, and strong instruction, we will see that data to continue to move. So we are already seeing some good bits and pieces of that. We need to look at, and this was a discussion that came with Mr. Nordby and his high school administrative group, is really working on aligning our curriculum vertically and making sure that our common assessments are robust and are aligned to the standards that are being assessed on the state assessment, making sure that we are hitting all of those standards. And then we're going to continue to increase our coaching capacity with acceleration learning. And in doing those 3 things, we will continue to close the gap on the state with our state assessments. We have a long road ahead of us. Not all of the data is rosy and good, and we understand that. But I think everyone within the instruction office, with our coaches and our administrators, as we've been looking at data this first semester, to a T are pulling up their bootstraps and are attacking the data. We started in October meeting with each building, the building principal and the instructional coach, on looking at specific data in their building, and they set a 2-month goal on what can they do to improve data in 2 months, and we're taking small chunks of it. So we just finished round 1, we're starting round 2, and to a T, every building we've met with so far has met their first goal and is continuing to rewrite a new data instruction goal. And so we're very excited about that future of how we're staying focused on our data by taking small chunks versus trying to take a big chunk at one time. So any questions on state assessments?
Please.
Have you talked about or evaluated why 7th grade consistently has bad numbers?
Not yet. So this data had just been compiled and completed last week. And so the next step is looking at aligning curriculum and improving core instruction. We believe that if we can analyze specifically right now in 7th grade, where are we missing the standards, and is the curriculum aligned between 6th and 7th and 7th and 8th, some of those breakdowns. How do we get that vertically aligned, and then how do we ensure that the common assessments that are being given meet this depth of standard that's being asked on the state assessment? We may have better answers. At this time, I don't have any for you, other than we're ready to get to work on that now.
It just seems it's been consistent pretty much from 2016, so I hope that's like, and we had talked about middle school, some of the issues there, so, okay, great, thank you.
So along that same lines, I mean, are we waiting on state assessments to figure out these indicators to see what we're lacking?
No. Excuse me, sorry. We already know the clustered standards that are assessed on the test, and we know at what depth of knowledge they're assessed and what % of those standards are on the test. So currently, we've started the process of what we're calling mapping the standards to our curriculum maps and seeing where those are taught, what percent of the amount of time that we're teaching. So I've completed one so far. So I apologize, I don't have more for you, but I can speak to third grade math because that's where I started. Module 7 in third grade math, we spend about 28% of our time teaching on it, but it's not even a standard cluster that's assessed. Module 4, we only spend about 19% of our instructional days on, but it has a major cluster standard in it. So there's some of those mapping pieces of, okay, we need to increase the amount of time we're in Module 4 and decrease the amount of time in Module 7. Now, Module 7 has supporting clusters and supporting standards that need to be taught because they will be used the next year. But we need to re-emphasize and map our pacing guides to meet the way that the standards are being addressed. So we're not teaching to the test, but we're going to map our curriculum, hopefully, percentage-wise to match that. So it's going to take the rest of this year to get that mapped, and then we'll be ready to implement it next year.
So, to follow up, are we also, I imagine we're collaborating with a lot of other people in the state, or are we just looking at our state assessment indicators? I mean, there's got to be, I'm curious if there's other districts out there that are struggling on some of the areas that we are. Is there programs that they're using to gain?
Every school in the state of Kansas, unless you're one of the top 5%, they want to improve their scores. And so you're always trying to find that magic program. And each one of those is unique because each district is unique. But what we have found is that we have a lot of the programs or possibilities in place. How are we using them with intentionality to ensure that the students are getting exactly what they need based on what they're missing? So if I'm a student that has standard A covered, I shouldn't be doing, just in time work on standard A. I may need some work on standard B. And so making sure that we're intentional with planning for that, we believe is the next step. We feel like we have the resources, but we just haven't been as intentional with utilizing those resources based on data yet.
Okay, so that answers the question. You're not going to be able to use most of the other districts' indicators because it doesn't really fit for us at home, but it's nice to know that we're seeing our own. I know I see them over there. I'm seeing our own that we're trying to tackle that, so that's good. That's perfect.
I might just share, just before we started with all the COVID stuff, we had a meeting that involved SUPs and some assistant superintendents, districts like Kansas City, Kansas, Wichita, Topeka, Dodge, Liberal, Emporia, Junction City, larger districts that have high percentages of at-risk kids. And the whole purpose of that meeting was organized by KSDE. And the whole purpose of that meeting, I think, Alex, was to do exactly what you're talking about, to have some conversations about what's working, what's not working, what are people doing. When COVID hit, all that got sidelined. What a coincidence that this morning I sat in on a Zoom with Doug Meckel from KSB and Corel and a couple of experts, and we're looking at kind of maybe establishing that conversation again. It's going to take a few months, but the real power in that is when we get kind of job alike people from across all these districts to have time to sit down, compare notes. What are you doing in your district? What's working? What's not? Because we would much rather steal some ideas that are working well for others than to try everything and learn it on our own. And so I anticipate this spring that those conversations will resume, and we'll get to do what we hoped to do 2 years ago, and that's having our experts in these areas, and maybe our human resources people too, looking at different ways we can retain and attract and recruit new teachers or support teachers through professional development, or how we can look at our curriculum and those kind of things. So.
Okay. You like data?
I'm a data nerd.
Yeah, it shows. It was very impressive.
Thank you.
Data-driven intentionality. Yeah. Can you give me a little history on your involvement of this data-driven intentionality?
in terms of the history of how we got to those numbers, or my
I
history?
mean, I find myself impressed and just curious, have I been missing this the last few years, or?
I think it's a collaborative approach. It was something within the instruction office as we started building this. Dr. Carlin asked us to go back and look at past data, and in conjunction and work with him and some of his history of doing this in the past, he was able to provide some past data that we didn't have access to. So when we put those two together and created a collaborative effort, we were able to come up with the data needed to make those, what would you call, formulas to validate where we were at compared to the state. So it wasn't just one person, it was a collaborative effort of the instruction office together.
How long ago?
Last couple of weeks, we've been putting that together.
So, this idea that I have, I haven't seen this before. I don't feel like I've seen this level of analysis of the data in the last 4 years, 3 years, is it?
I've been here for 6 months now, so I can speak to the last 6 months.
Maybe it's your presentation. I don't know. I want to say, I feel like I need to hear it 5 more times before I can completely wrap my head around it. And I find comfort in that. I really want to compliment that. This is so reassuring for me personally. That this data-driven analysis of what's working and what's not, what grades, where are we, which direction are we going? It's pretty exciting for me, even though it is a lot of data. It is hard to just stay focused and digest what you're trying to say to us. And again, I feel like I can hear it 5 more times before I can really internalize it. But we've discussed, we've discussed changing our building setups. We've discussed, changing the grades and how many transitions these kids get. And we see so many different programs, and for me, I always kind of feel like, okay, what's the history? What do we try? What do we not? And where's the data? Where's the data? How do we know? So, yeah.
There's still some mysteries in there, and you sort of highlighted some of those.
But you could, I would want to hear it again, but can you see how they're trying to break that down to even ask these questions in, how did you put it, small bites?
Granular.
Granular, thank you, yeah. And so I'm trying to answer all the questions at once, but one set of data, there's subsection of the data, and subsection they can't. What's your background?
I've been in education for 21 years.
Do you have a statistics degree, or do you know?
I was a business teacher.
No?
I've always liked math. As an administrator, I've always valued when we started learning about NTSS that we have to have data to support evidence. In any business world, you got to have data to support why you make decisions. And if you don't have data that you can rely on, you can't make decisions. People that make decisions on their gut go bankrupt.
Well, I want to compliment both of you and anyone else who's involved in this. Because this, to me, is extremely impressive.
You grew up with an administrator too, I think.
No, my dad was he was a
Teacher.
teacher. I was 4th generation education, so I was born into it.
Nothing more, except it is, I agree, this is very, very interesting. And aligning curriculum with robust common assessments, not teaching to the test. And we keep tripping over that historically, no child left behind. But that's the art, I think I heard you use that word earlier. That's sort of the art here of we just came off talking about ACT tests, and what does that tell us? And then this comparing ourselves with peer school districts, and how are we doing? And yet there's still that goal of getting the kids individually what they need to be successful citizens and successful in their education career. And that's the art of it, I think.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting as we go forward to learn more from this data.
The concern I have, with regards to a couple of the comments that you made, I don't want to shortchange the other areas. I mean, I appreciate the percentages and things like that, but what I'm concerned about is by minimizing some of the other areas, then you're going to run into the problems of, then having bad test scores in the future, because you do have to have the building blocks from the previous year. So,
In terms of like the acceleration learning where we stay.
yeah, let's say math. I mean, okay, I hate math. So, you know, if I can minimize something, I definitely will. But if I don't learn it in 5th grade and I need it for 50% of something in 6th grade, if I haven't learned it in 5th grade, then I'm going to fail on the state assessment in 6th grade. So, I mean, I understand that you want to map it out and check percentages, but you might also look at how that's going to impact the percentages in the next year too. Because, I mean, there are so many building blocks in, you know, in math and English and everything that if you're not also keeping a lookout in the future too, and that's part of teaching to the test. Because I've just heard horror stories from teachers too. Well, they're teaching to the test in 3rd grade, so now that I have them in 6th grade, they're still reading at a 3rd grade level.
What, and maybe I can fix a misconception or maybe restate the comment to help. We want to make sure that our focus at each grade level hits what the state tells us our focus should be, and that maybe we have missed maps and things in the future. And so we're just trying to reallocate some of that, not miss anything. If we don't teach decimals in 4th grade when we should, then when they have to multiply decimals in 6th grade, it creates an unfinished learning that we have to fill in with just-in-time support. So we're still going to teach it, and we're going to give it the amount of time that it needs to meet our overall map. So it would be similar to any journey that you would take. You want to make sure that you pace yourself to hit each journey or each mile marker along the way. What we want to do is, instead of spending extra time on something that doesn't help us that year, we're going to give it its due and its responsibility, but we also want to make sure that what we're needing to test on that year or teach, we're giving it its proper due as well. We felt there was an imbalance, so we were just trying to balance those up versus take away from one.
And I appreciate what you were saying. I'm just worried about Mr. Johnson 2.0. So like the next one, the next phase.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I also appreciate the fact that you're able to break down close to 7,000 students, each one into separate clusters. I believe you say clusters of modules that they're doing really well in and might not need so much, but they need more over here in this cluster to do a lot better. That's got to be a tremendous effort on the district's part and your team to educate those 7,000 plus students and to identify each and every one of them. So that's refreshing, reassuring that we're dialing it down, tweaking it, if you will, to get to each and every one of those granules. So that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, she should know. Okay, well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, unfinished business is our privilege to appoint the board attorney for January 2022 through June 2022. Seeking motion.
Mr. President, I need to recuse myself. Someone else there want to make the motion?
I guess that's me.
You really
Is this
don't
only- No, that's
You
okay.
didn't interview, so.
Do you have the motion written for me, or do I?
No.
I move that we approve the recommendation of the board attorney, the recommendation of the committee to accept, that we move to accept the recommendation of the committee for our district attorney.
Motion by Tim.
Second.
Motion by Tim, second by Laura. Discussion?
Well, I'll start off by speaking to the confidence that I had that the interview process, although we only had one candidate, the interview process was very well. I'm very areas that they know that they need to gain more knowledge. There's also some areas that they're, you know, have quite a bit of experience in, maybe not in the school setting, but they have a lot of experience in. It was just a really, really good interview. And I feel really confident in being part of the committee and speaking to the recommendation the committee is making. And I'd also like to add that change is scary. I mean, we've been so blessed for so long, but I saw several examples of how this change is actually going to be an opportunity. And our candidate was already interested in reviewing all of our policies. They were going to do it whether we asked them to or not. And I think Dr. Carlin sort of acknowledged that, yeah, we'll probably do to have policies reviewed. They already planned to do that. They came to the interview already knowing that they wanted to do that. And I think there are examples of things that they discussed that are just really good opportunities to have a fresh set of eyes and make this change a real positive and not worry that it's going to be a step back at all.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Can I just for clarification to the people that might be watching or people in the audience, the district received one proposal from the firm Darren, Gazelle, and Cunningham, and that proposal included Jennifer Cunningham as in the role of board counsel with kind of a sequence of backups through other attorneys in their firm, and discussed the type of support that they would be able to provide, and then our interview was able to kind of dive deeper into that. But just to be clear, we've talked about the recommendation. The recommendation unanimously of that committee was to appoint Mrs. Cunningham as the board attorney for January through June, and then every year, the board, in your organizational meeting, you appoint your counsel. So this would be done again, not that we have to go through a formal process, but the board will have to take action in July next year to appoint your counsel for the school year 22-23 next July. Jennifer?
Now I remember what I was gonna say. No, I wasn't able to make the interview, so I appreciate that your positive and encouraging words on how it went and the information, and that you feel like they're qualified. Was there any concerns about the short window of posting the position, that perhaps we would have gotten more applicants if it would have been a little longer? I guess I'm asking, perhaps the board members were there, or do you feel satisfied with that process?
You know, I really didn't ask any questions about what may or may not have contributed to it. You know, I guess maybe Laura, being in the legal world, would be able to tell you whether or not there would have been more interest if we'd done something different.
As I mentioned at the last meeting, I didn't think you were going to get that many applications. I'm aware for the college, there were two applications. Last meeting, I wasn't sure if there were two or three. There were only two. I can't see the other one. I was one of those two. I wasn't going to apply. The other one, it was out of town. I can't see them having an interest in this position. I don't think the time frame would have changed anything. Talking to the other two firms that had shown an interest, because 4 went to the pre-proposal meeting. Neither of them applied for the college. And speaking with the partners in one of those firms, they didn't want to make the leap in learning education law. And the other one decided he wanted to take his practice a different route. So I honestly think if you'd given it a day, you probably would have gotten the one application.
Right.
Or given it a year, you probably would have just gotten the one application.
And I didn't mean for you to have to repeat yourself. I just thought it was
Yeah.
important to bring it back up for community members, because that question I think would come to us perhaps, well, did you rush into that because you only had one applicant? Does that make sense? I just, and I'm not saying that we don't have the best, we haven't made the best choice. I trust in our committee that we have, so I just thought it was important to clarify that we had discussed that and feel like we've made the best decision.
I confess to coming into it wishing that I would have had more than one applicant, so we at least had the ability to compare. You know, I think there was an acknowledgement on the committee that if we were interested in retaining local services, that we were not likely to find anybody with experience other than the one that we've had for 27 years. It's the same firm. And I guess just during the interview process, this concern I had that we only had one applicant, it just dissipated for me during the interview. And there was just I think Jennifer's just got a really good commitment and understanding first of all of what she needs to work towards the learning, and the commitment's there to do it. And this level of support that they have with, you know, Mr. Brazell being one of the potential supports, they have a library of all of the calls that we've made over I don't remember how many years. And Heath was a little bit back on his heels to find out that was not a joke. They actually do have a library, and he's likely to have his own section in the library for all the calls that he's made. So, you know, it's nice continuity. I felt like there was a real commitment to not just do this for a year or do this for 2 years and see how it goes. No, they seem very committed to me to making this part of their firm and making sure that they have the personnel to handle it and taking care of what they need to take care of to learn how to be experienced at it, other than just having the time to become experienced at it.
If it makes you feel any better, Heath, there was a large section of my library missing when I moved into my office that, from what I understand, used to be the school district section when Mr. Lloyd served in that capacity. So,
Thank you for that.
that was a really long time ago.
So missing records, is that?
Well, no, he took them with him. I couldn't have them, so.
Ms. Rude?
No, nothing. I appreciate the commitment of the interview process and
Yeah, just concur with Tim. I don't think any more time. I think we followed the process. We did everything we could. We put it out there. We advertised, and we got the best candidate that stepped forward. Of course, we're kind of hindered a little bit as far as how to interview that, but obviously it was great to have a team there that we could bounce ideas off, and we pre-met and come up with some pretty good questions. And we grilled Jennifer and Jimmy a little bit, and they answered those questions pretty good. I think the greatest part was that they didn't even have the job yet, and they're already taking KSB seminars to understand school a lot better. So that tells me that they're ready to hit the ground running. And to have the backing of that firm and Randy Brazell, even if it's on a ski slope, he's committed to help us out. The only thing I could probably take away that was a negative is probably Heath's jacket. But other than that, we can move forward. So anyway, any more discussion? We'll get it. Is it history? Dr. Carly, anything else?
No, just thanks for everybody participating, and I guess fortunately we have only had to go through this like twice in the last 25 years or thereabouts. I'm not sure what the exact number is, and so we hope we don't need to do it again for another 25.
It's great to say that you got some big shoes to fill, but the shoes actually reside in your house. You know what I mean? In your firm. So, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, congratulations. We look forward to working with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good luck.
Thank you.
And Jennifer, I would also add, I think the amount of
read this report, or I feel pretty good about it. Tonight I feel better than I did the last couple times, so we'll take what we get, but this one's a little better, so. All right, just a review of our data, our website. All right, positive cases, you will notice the spike at 161 coming back down, kind of bouncing back and forth there, but back down to 145 this last week. You'll see similar graphs following that same pattern throughout as we go down. Positivity rate was high at 42.6, has dropped back this last week at 37.1. Local hospital COVID patients, the COVID hospitalizations has dropped. The ICU has stayed steady. Positive students, so the top line is cumulative for the year, the bottom line is the average by week. So again, you can see where it peaked at 46, then 50, and then back down to 36. And this is the number of students sent home with symptoms, averaged by the week. So again, we peaked at 11.6 and have come back down to the 4.4 last week. Average daily absences, I'm really glad this one is down because we have to have them in class to teach them, so that's really good. So overall, the COVID numbers are the blue. So we had 366 out at our high, and that is because of our high quarantine numbers. So we had quite a few classrooms that were quarantined by the health department, and we had lots and lots of kids out in quarantine. So that has come back down now after Thanksgiving.
Now I don't get asked any questions.
So
I know.
Go ahead and ask.
I mean, thank you.
Okay. And look at the attendance. Is that not wonderful? I mean, we're almost back up to the 89 that we had a while back, but we want to bump it up over 90 for sure, but it is coming back up this last week. So that's really good news.
I'm sorry, on the attendance,
Uh-huh.
is that taking into account activities? So are you going to even be able to do that if you have kids gone for activities?
That isn't, so if they start the day there and they leave for an activity, they're still counted present.
Okay.
I might add to that though too, in normal times, we would hope that number would be 95%. And historically, our attendance rate has been, in the last few years prior to COVID, was between 94 and 95. So Linda's right, we want to see that number get over 90, but we really want to see it get over 95. So this gives you an indication that there is a lot more absenteeism going on, has been over the last 2 years. Even when it looks a little better than the worst, we still need to get back to where we have 94-95% of our kids attending school on a daily basis.
I'm happy for baby steps. These are our staff absences. Just scroll on down because I don't have there we go, we've got 4 lines there. So the top blue, if I remember correctly, is all staff, and then the next, whatever color gray that is classroom staff. Those are all absences. And then if you look at the next 2 lines, the top line is staff, all staff, so that includes all departments absent due to COVID. And then the yellow line is classroom staff, so teachers, paras. And again, those numbers are coming back down. Positive staff per week, we hit a high at 19, and that has gradually decreased. Now we're at 14, with a total of 118 staff positive this year. I hope it keeps dropping. he's the worst nightmare, because then we impact this chart right here. So, our weekly substitute data, we hit a high of 50 requests and only 27%, or 27 filled. But we brought that back down and kind of closed that gap again this last week. Here's the big one with the number of students quarantined. We hit the high of the 366. That was pre-Thanksgiving when we had all of those classrooms that were quarantined. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when we get back to the PowerPoint, but we're back down to the 134. Currently, we have only 4, I'm gonna knock on wood here because I don't want to jinx my tomorrow, elementary schools with a positive case, so they're yellow, their building is yellow, or they have a classroom that's yellow. Prior to Thanksgiving, we had a good chunk of all of our buildings had some kind of yellow, and we had 5 schools that had a red classroom, meaning that the health department had quarantined an entire classroom because of the number, 3 or more positives in that classroom. Those schools that had red classrooms were Plymouth, Alta Brown, Gertrude Walker, Bernadine Sitz, and Garfield. Garfield had 3 classrooms that were quarantined prior to Thanksgiving. So the extra days off, I'm hopeful that that had a positive impact. Today, for example, we had 8 names on our list or positive cases on our list, but only 3 impacted a school because they became sick during our break. So it didn't impact, and we didn't have to turn a classroom yellow. So while the high school, for example, is yellow, as it shows both middles and the high school yellow right now, that only 1 student. So the high school actually has 7 classrooms that are yellow and the rest are green right now. So that's really, really good news coming off of Thanksgiving. So I hope we can continue that trend right now. Questions?
Just make one comment. The 2 reports I've seen in the last 3 days on the Omicron variant, which if it's not here, it will be in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Preliminary reports are that it has a high degree of penetrance for people who are unvaccinated, even if you've previously contracted COVID. So you get resistance to infection generally when you get infected previously, but you get a higher degree of resistance if you're vaccinated. This Omicron variant is likely to penetrate the people who've already caught it but have never actually gotten vaccinated. And if it isn't this variant, it'll be another one. The solution to what seems like a never-ending nightmare, the solution is vaccination.
And it is in the United States now.
Yeah, that's all over the United States. The Omicron variant, if, let's say we had 50% of this county that were never vaccinated, maybe many of them, depending on the idea that they've already been infected with COVID, they're not going to get reinfected. Well, Omicron variant is likely to reinfect them, and we could do it all over again. Until people start to actually trust and understand that the way out of this for us is vaccination. And boosters. Didn't get my booster exactly when I should have gotten my booster. Got COVID. Yeah. Vaccinations and boosters. Gotta do it and gotta do it when you're supposed to do it. As many times as I've been up here saying that I procrastinated my booster an extra 3 weeks and caught COVID. If you haven't had it, you don't want it.
So the only other question I have is, how's the hospital as far as busy, packed?
The ICU is still full, but the COVID hospitalizations are down this last week.
And we get that information?
It's one of the charts on there.
I know, but, sorry, I didn't see it, but as far as, we get the information on Thursday? Is that,
I get a daily spreadsheet from the hospital, and then we compile that and put that out at the end of the week, that their numbers are still holding with that. The census of total COVID patients is down single digits to low double digits. It had been running around 18. It's been between 9 and 12
they maintained, they did a fabulous job. I can't speak high enough for the above and beyond that all of the staff are doing right now, covering for each other when somebody's out positive, or combining classrooms where they can. They have to combine like status classrooms. They can't say, oh, his classroom is yellow and mine is green. We can't combine them to cover, but they are doing a phenomenal job, or were before Christmas. So I hope we have a little bit of a window here, quasi-normal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
And this is probably more of a board open discussion thing, but because it was brought up, I'm uncomfortable pushing vaccinations from our side of the table, and Dr. Hannigan, I respect you, but I've listened at several meetings of you promoting it and speaking on the science of it, but I think it's important, if it's gonna be said, that to acknowledge that there's both sides of the science, and that there are legitimate medical studies out there that talk about natural immunity, and that people are also still getting COVID when they're vaccinated. And there may be studies out there now that say the reason you caught it is because you didn't get your booster right away. When things are said that make me uncomfortable as a board member, I feel like that I should take the opportunity to speak that, and it's not to disrespect you in any way at all. I just think we're not a medical board, and for us to push that on the public or our staff or our students or our parents, it makes me very uncomfortable. And I've seen that from the administration level too sometimes, and you're all doing your jobs, and I think it's important to respect both sides of the story and to look at both sides of the science. And I hate to say that I'm putting it on different sides, but looking at the whole picture.
You know what, I completely appreciate your comments, and I regret that I made you uncomfortable. And I won't speak to it again from this side of the table. No, I actually agree with you. I mean,
I don't want to discourage you from ever speaking. I just felt like it was time for, I don't want this table to be a debate on that at all. I just felt like it was time for me.
I think it's, I think it's a really valid point. It is a different spot to be sitting here than it is to be sitting down there. And just because this is so clear to me and how it affects our schools, doesn't necessarily give me license to say the things that I've been saying. I like to think it's from an educational standpoint, but I appreciate your comments. I think these are the kind of comments we should be able to make to each other. And I respect your thoughts, and I won't do it again. I think you're right. And I apologize.
Well, and I wasn't seeking an apology at all.
No, I get it. No, it was warranted since I made you uncomfortable.
Any other questions, comments on COVID? Okay, great. Thank you, Linda. New business, Mr. Allen. Thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome.
We appreciate you making the trip.
Yeah. Along 30 feet. Sunset Terrace, Phase 1. This is an RHID project. You've been noticed along with the other taxing entities in Garden City. The resolution's been passed by the City Commission of their intent to create a rural housing incentive district. So I'm here at your request in case there's questions on that project. I'm prepared to answer them. High math is they've got about $3.8 billion in estimated eligible infrastructure costs. They would generate that in probably the first 12 years or 13 years based on the pace at which they would build those 70 single-family units that they estimate would sell between $300,000 and $375,000. So Sunset Terrace Phase 1 is located out east off of Towns Riverview Road, right? Is that Towns Road? Next to the Sunset Cemetery, Sunset Memorial Gardens. Yeah. Any questions?
And I may be completely off base. Is this the area where they were having the water issues in the past? Has that been resolved? Is that a concern with these?
No, these these
This
folks
how
will
we
be
do
on, these folks will be on city water,
Okay.
yeah.
I hope
But
that
in
wasn't a naive
That is the
question
same, generally the same
or
area.
ignorant question. I hope that
No,
wasn't.
this property is immediately north of, one of the kind of two identifiable Towns Riverview enclaves that are served by, a separate water supply.
Okay.
That is now, supplemented by city water
Okay.
out to that area. So the most, water that was most in question would be in the area called Towns Riverview South, which is a little further away from this subdivision, but these folks will be on city water and it'll be just fine.
Is gonna start changing speed limits like the ones out north on 3rd Street did all of a sudden? I'm sorry, just joking.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, my speed limit changed, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's usually a little bit of public education that goes out on that, a little bit of noticing on the road.
Until all of a sudden I saw the flag, and I was like, whoa.
We'll double check and make sure we just didn't go out and change the signs, but usually there's a few months worth of notification that we're gonna
My
be
son
dropping the
noticed it
speed
before
limits.
me, so that was good.
Any other questions or comments, discussion? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Hey, board open discussion, side of evaluation. Jennifer?
I think I've said enough tonight.
Oh, no, you did fine. Mark?
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay. Mark?
I don't have anything this evening either.
Okay.
I just want to follow up, and Jennifer's comment, I think, is really just in the spirit of what I see as important in this board, which is respectful. He was candid, and I would encourage her. I mean, it was probably hard for her to say. She was probably thinking about saying it to me for a while. And I just feel like that kind of atmosphere is really what I've been hoping to see for all of us. I think it's valuable.
I kind of want to put, I don't know if it's like a public service announcement or just really highlight and applaud the high school counseling department. They have been operating parent seminars, and I attended the last one on just drug information. And not only is the information valuable, but it's really nice to have that parent connection. I know we talked, I mean, some of the questions that were asked and some of the comments that were made were really helpful just because you have similar concerns and similar ideas about what might be going on. And one of the women who like made the best comment, like I've seen her at Dylan's twice now, it's like, you know, parents really need to unite. And we've all heard the numbers of students that our counselors are in charge of just what they do day to day. And to go this extra mile to try and engage parents on some of the critical issues, I know we've really upped our social emotional game over the last year to maybe at this point time flies, but there was one tonight on mental health, and my husband attended, so I'm really looking forward to getting back and hearing how that went. And I just want to encourage parents to attend, because even if you don't feel like your child might be having any of these issues or involved in any of these things right now, you know, it's really helpful to hear what is out there and what is surrounding your child, or what other children and, you know, that their friends might be dealing with. So I just, I'm really grateful that they're doing that, and I hope that more parents will attend, because I think their numbers have been a little bit low, but they still keep going, and that's awesome, so.
Good, Mark.
Sorry, Dana reminded me of one noteworthy thing that I just wanted to mention. That the after-school program, Dana and I were able to attend and get sort of an update on how that's going. Was that out around that we went? And it was a time well spent. I mean, the program that they have going there just sounds like there's a good collaboration going on, where there are kids that maybe need a little extra help, and they're recommended for that program, and the funding that we're able to provide, I think, is just fabulous, money well spent for math and for reading assistance, and even for a little bit of, I think, music. We watched a session. They break up into sort of three events, and these kids groups circulate through reading time and math time, and in this case, music or an activity, and there are kids that are needing some extra help. And so after school, it's just, I think we're operating off of a grant right now, but Jamie Swear and others there on that team, collaborating with the principals and with the teachers that are participating, I think it's just fabulous. So that, I thought it was noteworthy. I don't know if you have any comments as well, Dana.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, because I did another one too at Gertrude Walker. And just again, I mean, we hear the teachers that come or the coaches that come and present, and they are just continually learning. And I think that these teachers who are willing to stay after a long day of school, and they give whatever time they can. I know Jamie was talking about even if I can get them for just one of the sessions, and then, you know, she has them coming in and out, which is, you know, innovative, because maybe somebody can't volunteer or participate in that for the full amount of time, but it's an hour and a half, I believe, right?
I think that's right.
But they give what they can, and I just see that time and time again with our teachers, so I'm just always blown away by that, and that's just another extension of that, so thanks, Mark.
Our next meeting is a payables meeting and a board retreat, so it hit me earlier today that this is my last board open discussion. So I took a lesson from Jean Clifford, so I drafted my remarks ahead of time. Since the election, I've been giving a lot of thought about the last 10 years and the accomplishments of this board. I am proud that for the last 10 years, this board has been quite diverse. We had individuals from all walks of life: agriculture, water, education, electrical, doctors, lawyers. We all brought our unique perspectives to this board, and I, for the most part, was comfortable that we had the students, teachers, and stakeholders in mind first and foremost, not a personal agenda. During these past 10 years, we saw the opening of a state-of-the-art high school, the implementation of a one-to-one technology program, and the opening of an early childhood center. We worked diligently on assessing the structure of a new school alignment. I regret that I will not be here to see that through as a board member. We saw new programs being implemented, including the new teacher program, which we heard about tonight, new college courses, new academic programs, such as the MION program, which we had before, and then we've been able to reinstitute this year. We were able to have robotics, middle school cheerleading, swimming, expanding the theater department, Scholars Bowl, unified bowling, the Buffalo Coffee Shop. We tried to do the Buster Coffee Shop. We've tried other programs that may have been successful, some not as successful, but all the time we've tried to be moving forward and moving our students forward. We have tried to help our teachers with increases in pay, and when we can, days off. Some of you may remember a horrible, horrible day in May where the sun was shining during COVID, where you got an inclement weather day. And then those 2 days last week. We hired a superintendent who had incredible foresight with his planning and has utilized his district site council and cabinet to ensure that we are obtaining stakeholder input in the majority of our decisions. He has been seen as a team player both in Garden City community and on the state level. When I ran for school board, I did so probably as others did, thinking the school board was one thing, and wanting to make sure that my kids had the same opportunities that I had when I was growing up in Johnson County. Looking back over the last 10 years, I can proudly say mission accomplished. My boys have had tremendous opportunities. I'm looking looking forward to my new role in this district. Thank you to each of you on this board. I really appreciate all that you have done. And I thank those who I have served with in the past who are not here tonight. I want to thank Drs. Carlin and Atha and all of the staff that I've also had the pleasure to work with over the last 10 years as well. It has been a tremendous honor. Thank you.
Dr. Carter?
I don't have anything next.
I don't have anything yet. Thanks.
Okay, moving forward, thank you, Dale. I do want to say, we do have a board retreat December 16th, so hopefully everybody got the email on the questionnaire and was able to put your input in there and to compile that. We're looking forward to that board retreat, and so I'll have more comments later on as far as my term here on the board, but yeah. Okay, the next board meeting of the Board of Education will take place on Thursday, December 16th, 2021 at 5 p.m. in the City Commission Chamber, City Admin Building, Garden City, Kansas. We're going to move into some executive sessions. Thank you guys for coming tonight. Appreciate it.